Welcome to Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell. This is the place where we dive into the world of talent acquisition, explore the challenges of today's workplace, and discover what it takes to build a thriving and successful organization.
My guest this week is a leadership expert and best-selling author, Liz Wiseman. Liz is the CEO of the Wiseman Group and a top researcher on leadership and talent development. She has taught leadership strategies to major companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Salesforce. She is the author of bestsellers like Multipliers and Impact Players. Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Well, John, it's good to be here.
You know, you've had an impressive career researching and advising on leadership. What originally inspired you to focus your career on leadership development?
I'm not entirely sure what lit the fire in me, but I think it had something to do with a professor I had as an undergraduate, and I was taking organizational behavior 321, and I was lucky to find myself in the class of Carrie Patterson, Dr. Carrie Patterson, who was the lead researcher and author behind Crucial Conversations and Crucial Confrontations and Change Anything and Influence, and a series of books. And I just thought I was so interested in the subject, but I was also really interested in Carrie and this, energy that he brought to his work. And, I think I ended up really focusing on leadership development, probably because I got thrown into leadership roles really early on in my career. I was young. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was looking around trying to figure out how to do this job well.
Yeah.
And I think it was that quest and a really dynamic professor who just got me interested in trying to understand what the best leaders do.
Well, I can't tell you how many people and I'm guilty of this myself, when we put people in leadership positions, we just assume, you've seen leaders, obviously you can lead, right? You can lead a team or whatever. And I remember there was, I think her name was Estela Martinez, and we made her a senior project manager. And she turned around and she goes, okay, so where's my training? And it was like, it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. We don't have any. And people really need it.
We assume that it would be like assuming because someone has been in a car watching somebody drive that they will know how to drive. And it's very, it's very different. And, we tend to be very critical of our leaders. We look up and go, oh man, why is she doing that? And you know what, he doesn't get it. And then when we find ourselves behind the steering wheel, it's very different. And we're often ill-prepared because it looks like an easy job and it's not.
No, there's just so much going on you have to take into account. Let me switch just briefly to, your books have become very influential in the business world. Why books? What prompted you to start writing books on leadership and management as opposed to just, consulting on, not just, but as in addition to consulting?
Well, I didn't really set out to write books, and I had no aspiration to write a book. So I wasn't one of these kids who thought they would be an author and wrote stories. I was doing research, trying to find answers to challenges that I was dealing with as a leader and challenges that the executives I was coaching were dealing with. And when I found interesting things from the research, it seemed like I had to tell people about that. And so I started really with this ambition of I was going to write an article for, Harvard Business Review. That was my plan. But the folks there at Harvard Business Review said, oh, no, this is a book. And that article turned into a book. And, when I signed a contract with HarperCollins to write the book Multipliers, I had never written anything longer than a verbose email note and, maybe an annual Christmas letter. So it was one of those things where you say yes and then figure out how to do it once you've said
along the
yes.
way.
Yeah. I call this practice the naive yes. Say yes before your brain kicks in and tells you you don't know how to do that.
You don't know what you're doing. That's great. So you've also worked, as I mentioned in the intro, with many major companies like Apple, Google, Salesforce. What are some of the common leadership challenges or opportunities that you see across organizations?
Well, I think right now leaders are leading in the dark.
What do you mean by that?
When I started leading, kind of the model of leadership was this visionary leader, this leader who saw this vision of a better way, a better place. And the idea was to take people to this place that you could see, and often a place you had been. But I think right now leaders are asking people to leave a known place, to go off into an unknown in the dark. Meaning, it's the image I always get is one of these kind of apocalyptic movies, and it's something bad has happened, and this family has to evacuate, and it's like mom or dad wakes up their kids in the middle of the night and like, come on, we've got to go. And the kid would say, like, but where are we going? I don't know, but you need to come with me.
But
and
here
get
is
in the
no
car.
longer the place.
Here is no longer the place where we can stay. And I need you to go with me. And I don't know where I'm going. And I can't necessarily see. We're like going in under the cover of darkness. And I think for me, I use this metaphor of leading in the dark to capture what I think a lot of leaders are doing right now, which is, I don't know where we're going, but I know we can't keep doing what we're doing. And I don't know how the landscape's going to change, but I need people to come with me and trust me. And I don't have the answers, but we've got to create a learning system that allows us to figure out answers together. So I think a lot of leaders are leading in the dark, not necessarily in dark times, but
No,
in the
it's
place
just
of,
they're not leading from a place where they know where they're going. They're basically saying, we need to go someplace different, and they're trying to figure that out as they head there.
they're figuring it out as they go. And I think a lot of leaders are now in jobs that they didn't sign up for. Where I think a lot of people, when they said yes to managing the team, the job was to manage the performance of the team. And now suddenly your job is just your average corporate manager is not just to manage the performance of the team, but you're also managing the well-being of the team, the physical well-being, the mental well-being, the social climate, social justice. And now this job of leader is so much bigger. I mean, it's deep down into people's personal lives. I remember when I started leading, like, you kind of left people's personal lives.
Yeah, it was almost taboo to even touch on it. You know?
It was. And unfortunately, it was an environment a lot of people had to sort of hang themselves like on a coat rack as they came into the organization. But, you know, I think a lot of leaders are now in these jobs where they have such broad and holistic responsibilities for their team that they're, I think, out of their element. You know, we're definitely navigating in choppy and
Different
uncharted
waters,
for sure. And I think there's a lot of stress.
The upside is when you do get, as a leader, if you're able to pull everybody together and actually make all that work, you end up with people that are more fully engaged. I've found that people, when they can be their whole selves in the workplace and not have to, like you said, hang themselves on the coat rack as they walk in the office, they do better work. They're more engaged with people, but it is a challenge.
It's a holistic responsibility, but you get people's wholehearted contribution. And, you know, it's so much of what I've spent the last decade and a half studying is what is it that leaders do that allow people to contribute fully, like all in, all their ideas, all their insights, all their capabilities, not necessarily every ounce of the energy they have, like let's save a little bit of that for the rest of their life, but feeling like they can make a real full contribution.
So did your previous work, so you were an executive at Oracle before starting the Wiseman Group. How did that corporate experience inform some of the work that you do now at the Wiseman Group?
Well, first of all, I think it's made me more empathetic as a coach and as someone who teaches leaders around the world. I think I empathize with those challenges because I understand how hard the job is and how many tension points you feel. And, you know, having hired and fired and having had to do mass layoffs. I remember the day I had to say goodbye to 100 people on my team in one day. And, you know, those kind of experiences really change you. And I think I approach my work with a lot of operational empathy. And I think it informs the questions that I ask. I guess the research that I do is around perhaps pain points that managers are feeling on a daily basis. So it's very much shaped me as a researcher.
Does your background in organizational behavior also lend into the leadership research and writing, or have you really gone beyond that background?
Honestly, I don't think I can remember a thing I learned in school. But this is my belief that the process of education and higher education is so less about what we learn, and it's more about establishing a learning process. As a mom, I have 4 kids now, all 4 adults, and all of them at one point complained about what they were learning in high school. Like, I'll never use multivariable calculus, or I'm never going to use, I have never personally used trigonometry ever in my life. And so as my kids would complain that what they were using wasn't relevant, you probably won't ever use trigonometry, but what you have to use every single day in the workplace is this ability to identify something you need to know, to learn it, whether it's stuffing in your head and memorizing a speech for something, or learning how to think about something. That process of learning and then letting go of that and unlearning is the master skill right now. It's not today, it's not about what you know. It's about how fast you can learn. And that's the process we're learning over and over. And I do think in studying organizational behavior, I learned a way of thinking, maybe a set of questions to ask. And if I really learned one thing, the one idea I really remember came from Dr. Bonner Ritchie. I remember he used to say, the master leadership skill is the ability to manage ambiguity. That has stayed with me. And I really find this true, is this ability to lead in the dark. And it's what we find the most impactful contributors do, is they manage ambiguity very differently than other people.
Yeah, I totally relate to what you were saying, especially earlier about, what you learn in school is not necessarily, as in my senior lecture in electrical engineering, our professors got up there and they said, hey, guess what? 90% of everything you've spent memorizing, learning, you will never actually use in the workplace. But what we've taught you to do is to think and to learn and to solve problems. And that's really the skill, right? Because like you said, things are changing so fast. I mean, actually, I think I use it in my book. We show the knowledge curve, how much information is being generated on an exponential curve right now versus our learning capabilities, have basically been kind of a linear curve. And how do you catch up? And so there's the ability to learn is just crucial.
I think probably the most prized skill set that I gained was at Oracle, when I found myself presented with this opportunity to be a technical trainer. And I wanted to teach management training, and honestly, I had very little interest in being a technical trainer, but it was what was needed. And I put aside kind of what I was passionate about to work on what the business needed. And so just to put this in context, I'm now signed up. I come out of the business background, finance and organizational behavior, and I'm now teaching programming to the new programmers that we've hired out of MIT and Carnegie Mellon and, Caltech and Berkeley and Stanford, Harvard. And so we're hiring people with CS degrees, EE degrees, like John, I think you have. And I'm now assigned to teach programming. And I remember early on finding a partner in this, Leslie Stern, who had a proper programming background. She had gone to Berkeley. And I remember her saying, Liz, we gotta teach you to think like a programmer. Because what I would do, so I'm working for a software company, I would, build my applications using all of our tool stack. And I would build things. And of course they were buggy and they didn't work. And I'd be like, oh, that's not right. That's not right. And so I would change a bunch of components of that, recompile my code. And then it was still not working. She's like, Liz, this is how programmers think. We change one variable, we test, we change a variable, recompile the code, we test. And then we move to the second. I'm like, yeah, but I know the second thing is a problem. So let me change. No. Change one variable at a time. And she taught me very much this way of thinking. And it has shaped me as a researcher. Like, how do you isolate and how do you build evidence and how do you test a hypothesis? And that's a skill set that has served me well over the years.
That's fantastic. So, Liz, many consider you one of the top global thinkers on management and leadership. How do you stay innovative in your research and your work?
Oh, this is such a constant challenge because, when you've published something, people want you to talk about things you know about. And, when you keep talking about things you know about, something very predictable happens. Like, you build all sorts of ruts and you start to deeply ingrain that knowledge. And so to counter that, you have to continually ask new questions. So every couple years, I put aside that old research and the old books and talks and ideas and just take on something that I don't have answers to. And it's miserable because going from sure knowledge and competency and expertise to a place where you are wobbly and uncertain.
A neophyte all over again.
I hate it. But I love the feeling of finding answers to new questions. So I make myself go do this.
That's great. Pushing yourself to do new and different things that are, entering into the unknown. I mean, it makes you more resilient for the next unknown that's thrust on you, right?
Yeah, but it's not fun.
That's why we call it work. If it was fun, we just call it fun.
Yeah. I'm going into fun today. I've got some fun I have to do today.
So you've worked with leaders across many different sectors. Do you see any differences or nuances across sectors in terms of leadership? Or is it pretty much leadership is leadership no matter what sector it is?
Well, I think each sector presents a unique set of challenges, but I think if you ask almost anyone who works in a consulting kind of capacity, they will tell you that each organization who says we're different, we're unique, our industry is different, is probably not as different as they think. There are definitely some universal challenges that people are facing across all industries. Probably what is different is the cycle time in that industry. Some cycle really, really fast, some slower. So much of leadership is around understanding human nature. Here's the thing I've really learned. Being able to research and teach leadership all around the world, there's probably not an industry that I haven't spent a little bit of time in. I can't say that I've done this work in every country, but it's across a lot of countries and pretty much every continent. And here's the thing I found to be pretty common. People all around the world come to work, whether they work in manufacturing or they work in biotech. People come to work desperately wanting to contribute everything that they've got. That's what I have really learned, is that people don't want to quiet quit. They don't want to slack. They don't want to just phone it in. They don't want to just be told what to do. People really want their ideas to matter. They want to contribute fully. And when they encounter leaders that do create that environment, they would describe work as fun.
Yeah.
They would say, you know what, there's a lot expected of me and the standards are very high, but work is enriching, it's thrilling, it's challenging, it's growing, it's exhilarating. And when they encounter leaders or cultures or norms that say, well, you know what, we don't expect much of you. This is an hourly job, or this is just an execution kind of role. This is operational. They describe work as draining, tiring, frustrating, unsatisfying, unfulfilling, soul-sucking. But work suddenly becomes work and exhaustion.
Yeah. So in my book, Fire Your Hiring Habits, we talk a lot about, finding and keeping. And a lot about the keeping has to do with that challenge, creating a culture that appreciates and puts that person in a position where they want to be there. They want to succeed. And if they're not, they're going to leave. And so that's how you keep them. That's also how you find them, because people hear about those cultures and they want to be a part of that, or they don't.
Yeah, I so agree with that. It's people stay where they're engaged. And, there's, I guess, this whole school of thought, which is the way you keep people is with perks. carrots and perks and things. And, I live here in Silicon Valley, and, I guess maybe it's
Get the
not
foot massage or whatever it is,
Yeah, great snacks.
Free waffles for
Like,
breakfast, whatever, yeah.
all these kinds of things. And it's all built on this sense, like, kind of like the way to people's heart is through their stomach. There's that old saying. And what I am just found to be true is that the way to people's hearts is really through their minds. That when we create an environment where people's minds can be deeply engaged, fully utilized, when people are given not things to do, but problems to solve, puzzles to solve, like big questions to answer, like that wins our hearts.
That's right. If I'm doing something meaningful, if I'm not just, pulling a crank does not excite anybody to want to stay there long term. It's like, oh yeah, there's a paycheck or there may be waffles, but really, if you want to engage me, no matter who you are, let me use my skills. Let me solve the big challenges. Let me work on the big problems. Even if it's a longer term, I don't necessarily need to see the results tomorrow. It's that opportunity to grow and to make a difference. And that's one of the things I think that has become, I feel like more companies are aware of this, that they're saying, oh no, look, we don't create widget. Our widget is solving, whatever it may be. We're curing cancer. We're, generating freedom, or, whatever the big problem is that they're a piece of that solution. I think helps people find the passion to want to be where they're at.
Yeah.
All right, Liz, hold on a second. We have to stop here, but coming up in the second part of my conversation with leadership expert and best-selling author Liz Wiseman, Liz talks about why a sense of humor can be an important component of leadership.
Sense of humor was the thing that was most negatively correlated with diminishers, meaning they're not funny. And you think about it, everyone I've mentioned that to, they're like, oh yeah, my diminisher had no sense of humor.
This has been Fire Your Hiring Habits. If you want to empower your organization to reach new heights, go to johnwmitchell.com to find the techniques and tools you need to attract and retain the best team and boldly reimagine your workplace. Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell is a production of Forbes Books.